Continuing on with morality, the speed and parallel processing of the new digital age might reduce the frequency of full experience of such emotions with potentially negative consequences. So the speed and choices may be doing things to young people's brains that we don't fully realize yet. Then finally, in terms of the PowerPoint here, and this will be the end of that, the one thing that goes missing, and I won't be too neurological about this, there are clusters of brain cells that children in particular have called mirror neurons. These are the brain cells which absorb things from observation. They're stimulated predominantly by face-to-face contact, particularly with people that they are linked to, like their mothers and fathers. So these brain cells are important to become socialized, and they're stimulated by real face-to-face interaction, not by face-to-screen interaction. And that stimulation is directly linked to the level of children's empathy and the level of their social skills, according to a new study published in Neuroimage. So this is pretty serious stuff. And what I'd like to say in conclusion is that, again, technology is displacing non-virtual, real-world 3D experience. I'm complaining about the ratio of real to virtual experience, not about the technology. It's the amount it is being used and what it's being used doing and the age at which it's starting. Screen technology can be a tool, but the tail is wagging the dog. The balance isn't right. And a lot of people seem to have confused not what young people are interested in, but what is in the interests of young people. And I have to say that really this debate, like many debates, isn't about technology. It is about parenting. It's about the authority that we have over children and the way that we need to control what they do. Now, we realize we don't put refrigerators in children's bedrooms because they'll eat more. And now in Britain, we have the fattest children in Europe. We wouldn't put fridges in their bedrooms, but technology we haven't fully realized that if you make it too accessible and you put screens in young children's bedrooms, and now in babies' bedrooms, the biggest growth area, they will consume more, they will watch more, and you'll have less control over what they're watching, and this is what I'm asking for. And when I sum up, I'll give some specific recommendations about how we can get the balance right. But to finish, I'd like to remind you of what the definition of virtual is. Virtual means almost, but not quite. And my message is, keep it real for our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that, Aric. And our next speaker to oppose the motion is Donald Clark, who's well known to most people here as one of the founders of Epic Group, and he's now a board member of UFI, of Learning Light, Brighton Festival, Interactive University, Southeast Media Network, and he's also a school governor. Donald.
Good evening. Well, I didn't expect the first piece of evidence, which is the recommendation that my kids should be attending school and listening to their teacher like all those kids in North Korea. My God, Iran, Burma, and North Korea, is that what we're really recommending here? You should go on holiday to other places, Aric. But that was perhaps the worst example of scientific cherry-picking I've seen in the last year, but that's not only my opinion, it's the opinion of other people like Ben Goldacre, and I'll come to that in a moment. I want to start with just livening you up, end of a long day here. I want everybody in the room, I mean bar none, to put their left hand up here, just left hand, everybody, even the slackers at the back, right? And I want the person on the right-hand side to pretend there's a doorbell on the palm of the person next to them. Lean forward and press the bell. Everybody in the room. Okay? How many people use their forefinger? How many people use their thumb? A couple of the younger people there. Hardly anybody. The head of Intel's mobile research has been doing that experiment across the globe, from Japan across to Western Europe. And if you were all 13 to 15-year-olds, you would use your thumb. Why would you use their thumb? Because you're texting. And it's an example of cognitive change in young people, which is positive. They haven't lost the use of their other four fingers. Now, when I've asked my own children about this, their reaction was slightly different. And you know, I came across here and I told them what this debate was, and you know, they went, "What are you on about, Dad? You know, your generation has just plunged us into the greatest financial crisis of the century. There's been 2 world wars. You destroyed the planet with your greed, and you tell me we're dumb?" Didn't really get the point of all this. That was my kids when they were 2. This is them now, 16-year-old twins. And they love this stuff, you know? And if you're telling me they're getting dumber, you come and argue with these kids and see if they've lost their ability to do analysis. And I travel widely, and I don't see kids in the countries that I've been to, like China, etc., locked away for 7.5 hours a day. My kids come home from school at 4 o'clock. They'd have to do that non-stop till midnight without eating. I just don't believe it, Aric. 7.5 hours, it ain't on. That's cherry picking.
That wasn't my opinion, by the way. This were 4 studies that have found very much the same thing.
It's wrong.
Fine, okay.
Okay? The fact is, the proposition was that it damages students' mind, it's undermining the benefits of traditional learning. My proposition is that technology, on the whole, not always, improves student minds and enhances education, and let me explain why. I'll pick up one thing, which is general intelligence stats, and there's a thing called the Flynn effect in the literature, which is well known, but it's puzzling. Why does it appear that people have got smarter over the years? They've stripped out variables like good nutrition and improved education, and the hypothesis by Stephen Johnson initially was it's increased use of media. Initially television, then movies. And if you go back to the 1970s when we all had television, all those crap programs like Starsky and Hutch, you try showing that to my kids. You know, they are in a world of very sophisticated media, using the internet, using social networking, using computer games, and it does result in cognitive improvement. It's making us smarter. This was a headline in which Aric was quoted twice, supported by him, in the Daily Mail, a right-wing newspaper widely read in the UK. Facebook causes cancer. I never wrote
anything of the sort.
Quiet. You were in the quoted twice in the article, but let me come to that. You didn't write it. It was the journalist, fair enough. But this is what happens when people get carried away with hyperbole and rhetoric based on cherry-picking science. The fact is, this was written in a peer-reviewed journal by Aric, well-connected, the biological implications of social networking. The challenge was social networking in a peer-reviewed journal by Aric. He appeared shortly afterwards on Newsnight, a very important current affairs program in the UK with Jeremy Paxman and this guy here, Ben Goldacre. And Ben Goldacre tore Aric apart for the following reason. This is the guy who was an expert on bad science. I spoke to Ben before I came out here, and he said, I have never seen a worse example in the year of 2009 than Aric's work on social networking in terms of cherry picking. These were the papers which Aric quoted as citations, claiming that social networking was bad. If you notice, not one of them mentioned social networking at all. The papers were actually studies of elderly populations in the States and Europe, and look at the ages of the people, 50 to 67, 65, 59, 1997, before social networking even existed. US sample of elderly adults, but that wasn't the end of it. He quoted a guy called Krautar on this paper here, The Internet Paradox, that seemed to suggest, actually a bit of evidence here, that using the internet may have a small negative effect in measuring social involvement and psychological well-being amongst Pittsburgh's families. The same scientists repeated the experiment in 2001 and found that the reverse was true on a larger sample. Absolutely the opposite. In other words, the overall positive effects of using the internet in communication, social involvement, and well-being was the result of the paper. What did Aric do in his peer-reviewed paper? Published the first citation, but deliberately ignored the second. It's impossible to search for this stuff on the web without seeing the second paper.